Things just got worse and worse and worse as the night went on. Again, valiant effort down the stretch for the Bucks. Just too little, too late. Let's go down and let's see what Coach Fletch and the rest of the crew has to say. And as always, go Bulls. So let's head into the locker room right now and see what the guys have to say about that one. Wow. Where do the Buccaneers go from here? What an incredible atmosphere. What a good win for the Tampa Bay Lightning. They snapped a 7-game winning streak. How we feeling, Bucks Nation? It's time to party, baby.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Recher podcast. Happy Thursday, February. What is it? February something? February 6th. Happy February 6th, everybody. Hope everybody is doing well. Yeah, let me know if you're first or you're second or you're third. David Terry, Jay Bird, Big Dummy Dan, the whole crew here on the Recher podcast. I love you all. I appreciate all the love and support. Make sure you follow me on all social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok. I am everywhere, and like and subscribe on YouTube. The subscriptions over 1,000 now. Let's get it up to 2,000. Let your mailman know, your dentist, your social worker, your lawyer, anybody, your barber, let them know the Recher podcast live and local here in the Tampa Bay area every weekday at noon. And you know, we're going to talk a little bit of everything on the program, and we're going to do it today. We're going to start at 12:40 today, and we're going to have our guy John Sabol on. If you remember John Sabol, he was with ABC Action News for a while here in the Tampa Bay area. Now he's back in his hometown of Cleveland, and he does work for Fox 8 there. And I want to get his insight on Myles Garrett, because we're hearing a lot. We saw Myles Garrett there at Radio Row in New Orleans. It seems like his tenure is done with the Cleveland Browns. I know the price could be a little hefty. It could be a little high for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but I plead Jason Light and the crew, please go get a pass rusher. Please go get a guy that can affect this defense and put them in a position to succeed and be a freaking menace. You want the Buccaneers defense to strike fear in opposing offenses around the National Football League. That's what they did in their first championship back in 2002. In 2020, they had skill players all over the place. They need more guys like that. When you know, if you're going up against the Buccaneers, you're facing an elite pass rusher, and Myles Garrett needs to be that guy. So Jason Light, please, I don't care what it takes. I will start a GoFundMe. You know me and GoFundMes. We'll do what we can to make sure that Myles Garrett can be suited up in a Buccaneer uniform for the 2025 NFL season. All right. Also, plenty to get into. Stu Sternberg, the recent comments he just made about the stadium just make you shake your head even more. We're going to get into that momentarily, as well as Lightning Morning Skate, the updates from that. At 1 o'clock today, we're going to be joined by Jordyn Listro from the Tampa Bay Sun, the first female sports team here in the Tampa Bay area. Jordyn, tremendous background, USF grad. This is a person that she is one of the faces of this team, one of the faces of this organization. And it's been kind of a little bit of a weird split of the schedule. They played in the fall. Now they're starting up again in the spring here. They're just outside of a playoff spot. So let's hope that the Tampa Bay Sun can really start this second part of the season on a high note this weekend. And Jordyn Listro is going to join us as well. And then at 1:30 for his weekly hit, the one and only Eduardo Encina from the Tampa Bay Times. He's going to give us an update from Tampa Bay Lightning's morning skate, as well as some of the players that are in, some of the players that are out. Every week, every Thursday at 1:30, Ed Encina joins us. So again, thank you everybody for tuning in. Let's get right to some of the Lightning talk right now. I know I was going to talk about a couple of different things, but with this new Lightning news, I just wanted to get it off my chest. We saw today over at Amalie Arena some changes when it comes to the Tampa Bay Lightning. And first off, we see changes to the main four lines because Anthony Cirelli is not going to be in the lineup tonight. And we hear that from John Cooper. Nick Paul is in. Anthony Cirelli is out. So now you're starting to see media members that cover hockey all across the continent wondering about the status of Anthony Cirelli for the upcoming Four Nations Cup. We know that he was added to the team alongside his buddy Brandon Hagel. They're a dynamite force on the penalty kill as well as 5-on-5. My gut tells me that Anthony Cirelli really wants to play, but I honestly don't know if this is the smartest thing for him because he's obviously battling This isn't something where it's just like, oh, he took a puck off of here and he's out and he's going to be gone for 2 games. He's going to be back. We've seen him miss time. We've seen him miss time at the beginning of the game the other night on Tuesday night against Ottawa Senators when they went a while there without Nick Pohl or Anthony Cirelli. He's missed some skates. He hasn't missed, complete games, but the fact that now he's going to be not in the game tonight against the Ottawa Senators, and we saw the call up of a guy like Connor Sheary, I would be a little concerned if I was the Tampa Bay Lightning that he's going to be playing in an exhibition tournament next week for Team Canada. Do you feel comfortable as a Lightning fan knowing that Anthony Cirelli is not 100% and then he's going to be going and playing in a glorified exhibition? I don't, because he's one of the most integral pieces on this team. And I know he wants to represent his country. I get that. I know how much it means to him. He's such a great guy, right? And just think of the opportunity that you have to play under your coach, John Cooper, and Julian Breezewell, and playing with not only Hagel and Point, but also playing with guys like McDavid and Crosby. Like, this is great. It's great for him. But at the end of the day, it's an exhibition. This isn't the Olympics. This isn't a World Cup. I'm going to love it. I'm going to watch every game. But if you're telling me that Anthony Cirelli is not 100%, does it really make much sense if he goes to play for Team Canada? Because he doesn't play easy minutes. Anthony Cirelli does not play the type of game where he's just going to skate along the outside and be on the periphery, and he's not going to be able to get his nose dirty. That's not the way he plays. So let's say he pushes it, and then he goes and he plays for Team Canada and he gets hurt even more, and then you don't have him down the stretch. The best defensive forward this team has, one of the best defensive forwards in all of hockey, I don't feel comfortable with him playing for Team Canada if he isn't 100%. Do you, Bolts Nation? Do you feel comfortable with that? Because I sure as hell don't. I don't at all. Also, we saw today with the power play, this is something that I've been saying for the last couple of weeks on what the Lightning needed to do to change their power play. They needed to put Darren Radish in that quote-unquote Stamkos spot, his old office, because he's the only right-handed shot on this team with a slap shot good enough where other teams have to honor it. They can't just leave him over there. I know they tried it earlier on in the season, but he was too passive. He was too deferential. He did not want to shoot the puck. And today, at morning skate, he was on that top power play unit with Victor Hedman, with Gensel, with Point, with Kucherov. That needs to be your power play one. No doubt about it. And we saw in the last game, Hedman took over for Radish, and Radish went back to the second power play unit. But for me, if you're going to play your first power play unit for more than 60 seconds, then don't worry about balance. Stack your power play one and go try to score the goal. This makes too much sense. And I've been calling for it for weeks, and I'm so glad the Tampa Bay Lightning are doing it. The big reason why, and I know some people out there are like, man, I can't believe you'd have 2 defensemen out there. But if you look at the Lightning's power play compared to other power plays in the league, the Lightning's power play is less about player movement and more about puck movement. If you look at a team like Vegas, go watch their power play. It's guys moving all over the place. Eichel and Stone and Shea Theodore, like they're all over the place, right? They're moving. They're constant. With the Lightning, it's pretty stationary. You know where Victor Hedman's going to be. You know where Nikita Kucherov is going to be. You know where Braden Point is going to be. And I'm so glad he's going to be back right there in the slot because nobody scores more goals in that position than Braden Point. You have Jake Gensel down low to retrieve the puck and to also be, kind of that middleman to help, whether it's a deflection, whether it's, a pass to Braden Point or to the outside or up to the point. And then you put Darren Radish right there, ready to fire the puck. The only way that this is going to work is if Darren Radish is aggressive. The guy's got a hell of a shot. He really does. When it comes to the right-handed shots, I'll take his slap shot over anybody else on the team. But the only way this is going to work is if he is aggressive and he shoots the puck. Think about how many times we've seen the last couple of years, Kucherov with that cross-ice feed to Steven Stamkos, and it just set everything up. There was nothing that you could do against this Lightning power play. And it struggled. And they've been trying to find the right combination. These 5 guys are the right combination. And I'd be very surprised if it didn't work out. But as I just said, and I'll say it again, The only way this works, and I'm not just talking about with him, but I'm talking about the entire power play, the way it is constructed, is if Darren Radish is aggressive. So keep an eye on that tonight, Thursday night, Amalie Arena against the Ottawa Senators. If the Lightning get a power play opportunity, they're on the man advantage. Keep an eye on 43, because I guarantee you, if that man is aggressive with shooting the puck, that will unlock everything on this power play. All right, let's get to some of the things here. Man, we got so many notes. I want to get to these real quick. Here we go. Dolan, what up, Jay? I just saw something that said Cleveland defensive back Denzel Ward wants to trade if Garrett goes. Damn, I wish your Bucks could trade for both. Costs will probably be high. Yeah, I think that's too much. Ryan B. beat the Sens when they had a back-to-back. Now that they had some rest, going to be a tough game. You're right. Ottawa was coming off of a game against the Nashville Predators on Monday night. They traveled to Tampa to play them on Tuesday. They didn't skate. There was no morning skate. So tonight they're going to get a refreshed team. They're going to get a team that's angry, a team that was playing really well before that. You have to be ready to go from the jump. This is your last home game before the break. And I can't stress enough to the Lightning out there. These games are so vital. They're so important. Whose decision is it for Cirelli to go, Lady Evil? I think it's probably a collective. And it's a very unique situation because the guy that he's playing with or playing for is John Cooper, and the guy that helped put the roster together is Julien Brisebois. So it's definitely all of them together working together. And then some news for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Pacucci and Carberry promoted Jags fans told me they were being held back from career advancement. Well said. Well said. And we're going to get this tweet from our guy, Greg Allman. Okay. The Buccaneers have promoted offensive line coach Kevin Carberry to run game coordinator / offensive line coach, and the assistant offensive line coach, Brian Pacucci, has been promoted to offensive line coach. Bucs denied both permission to interview with the Jaguars. Now, if you really had any clue of what was going on, you had some semblance of an idea that this was something that was going to happen. If you were some numbnuts out there listening to somebody that doesn't have the balls to put his name on his Twitter handle and think, oh, wow, they're just trying to make sure that none of these guys can advance, and the Buccaneers run such a shoddy organization over there. Bullshit. Not a chance. We know better than that. Don't listen to any Tom, Dick, or Harry on social media that thinks they know anything when it comes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Trust guys like Greg Allman and Rick Stroud, okay? Trust guys like Greg Allman who have worked for not just the local paper, but The Athletic and now Fox Sports. Trust a guy like Rick Stroud that's been covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for the Times for longer than I've been in the Tampa Bay area, right? Trust the Ira Kaufmans of the world of Joe Bucks fan, a guy that has a vote for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The class of 2025 will be announced tonight. So just be careful who you get your information from on social media. Because all this talk about how the Lightning and they're preventing people from advancing. Does that make any sense? Does that make any sense at all? No. You had an idea that Carberry and Pacucci were going to get these promotions when Liam Cohen moved on, when you knew there was going to be change to this coaching staff, and that's what we've got. So even more continuity with this Buccaneer offense. I think that's a real big positive sign going forward. Let's make sure that we continue to keep an eye on some of these other moves, and especially on the defensive side of the ball. We announced on the podcast yesterday that Todd Bowles brought in Charlie Strong, former USF head coach, former head coach at Texas and Louisville, and he's had stops everywhere. I remember the last time I saw him at Recher, he was actually an assistant coach with Alabama a couple of years ago under Nick Saban. So he's been at Alabama. He's been at A&M. He's been in the NFL with the Jaguars. Like, Charlie Strong has been around. And if you missed it, we had this conversation yesterday with Ian Beckles on the Beckles and Recher podcast. When it comes to defensive line coaches, right, those guys, it's about tweaks. It's about little things here and there. It's about being a soundboard for some of these players. You're not going to get a ton of defensive line coaches. There's so few of these position coaches that really make such a huge impact that you even know who they are. Like, honestly, you remember the Alex Gibbs of the world? Do you remember the Dante Scarnecchi's of the world? And we're not talking coordinators. We're talking position coaches. And it's usually offensive line coaches. And not taking anything away from them. They're way better at what they're doing than what I would do in that situation. But just it's something to be cognizant. It's something to be aware of, something to understand when it comes to a situation like this. And I get it. David Terry says John Van Dam headed to Jacksonville as well. I mean, good for him. Good for him. You get the opportunity to go to Liam Cohen. That's fine. All right. But what we saw the last couple of years with John Van Dam, and we saw it here when he was with the Buccaneers, okay? He was the tight ends coach, assistant tight end coach in 21, and then the tight ends coach in 22 and 23, and then a pass game assistant in 24. Is that really much of a loss? Was anybody thrilled with how the tight ends looked 2 years ago? Not really. Was anybody thrilled with how the tight ends blocked in 22 and 23? They weren't themselves. We played it for you. Kate Otten told us as much. We got to do a better job. They were better last year, and that's a tip of the hat to a guy like Liam Cohen and the pre-snap motion and all those guys, what they were doing, helping block because they put that onus on themselves. I don't think that's much of a loss. Sorry. And I wish him well. I hope he does well. But I don't think losing John Van Dam to Jacksonville is something that's going to crumble and crush this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. And if you do believe that, then you're really exposing yourself to not really knowing what the hell you're talking about. It's nothing. It's nothing to me. All right. I want to talk about something else as well. And this is, man, I mean, when you see this headline, when you see these things, Rays Nation, how are you feeling about this upcoming season? How are you feeling about the stadium deal? Are you pissed? Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? Mark Topkin of the Tampa Bay Times writes this article, and the title is, As the Stadium Deadline Looms, Rays Sternberg Wrestles with Uncertain Future. The owner says the team is not for sale and that they have paused seeking additional investors. He also praises Tampa's support. Like, come on, Stu. The future never looks so cloudy, Mark writes. Definitely, Stu says. I think that's pretty clear, which is why I lose sleep over it. I'm trying. I know whatever decision I'll make, I'll be able to look in the mirror and put my head down on the pillow and know that I can live with myself with it. If it was for sale, people would know it. I've always been and will continue to be pretty transparent about our intentions and not pretty, but very honest about them. Okay. And I have been. That has not necessarily served us well for the last 3 to 4 months, but that is who I am, and I will continue that way. These are the type of comments that really get people to not trust Stu Sternberg. When he says that he was pretty transparent and pretty honest about their intentions, like, no, you haven't. No, you haven't, Stu. And I like Stu. I know that's weird because if you've never met him, like, you're like, how could you like this guy? But like, every time I've come across Stu Sternberg, he's a very nice guy. He is. But I don't know if I'd ever say that he was, has he been honest and transparent about this entire thing? Like, we didn't know that the Rays were like not trying to go forward with this. Remember? The bonds were voted on, and then the Rays were like, well, we don't really know. And then the city council or the county commissioner, I forget which one it was, they were like, wait a second, why did we just vote on this then? Why are we voting, putting over $500,000 in if the Rays don't even know if they want to be here? I don't quite understand. And what happens here, like if Stu sells the team, now you look back at those comments and go, were you really being transparent? Were you really being honest? Again, I go back to when we had him on at Rays Fan Fest last year, and he was complaining to Zach and I about, oh, I'm taking a loss on my P&L, this statement this year, because our thing is $90 million. You're taking a loss on your profit and loss statement, and your payroll is $90 million. I'm sorry, man. Like, nobody feels bad for you. Bring other investors in. Bring other owners in. Like, do something. But in the world that we live in, where the cost of eggs is going up and the cost of milk is going up, and people can't pay their rent, and people can't afford a car, you think people want to hear Stu Sternberg bitching and moaning about not having any money? Does anybody really tell me, do you think that Stu Sternberg has been honest and transparent about this whole situation? Like, we had Chris LaValla on, Pinellas County Commissioners. I'm going to try to get him on tomorrow. Remember where he was on first? Right here on the Jay Recher podcast. He was with us. And I asked him point blank, do you even trust Stu Sternberg? Now, he didn't want to come out and say it, but read between the lines. Read between the lines. There's no way in hell he trusts that man. You trust the Rays. You trust guys like Brian Auld and guys like Matt Silverman and Eric Neander. But in essence, they're just doing Stu's work. They work for him. That's not a shot. That's just a reality of the situation. And I feel bad for those guys because they have to pick up the pieces. Because Stu can tiptoe into this situation and back in and back out. It's almost like the hokey pokey. He can make a comment, back out, make a comment, disappear, go to a game, not be seen. And Brian Auld, Matt Silverman, and Eric Neander have to answer for everything. And they have to pick up the pieces. So I'm never going to be mad at those guys. Because at the end of the day, they're not signing the checks. Big Dummy Dan, fix and build or sell. Yes, we want him here. But if they play Sega games, well, yeah. And that's the thing. We're not even talking about the money for the Trop. This is for the new stadium. This is for the new stadium. You have to make sure that your partner, if you're the city and you're the county, that this guy who said he was going to do all of this and he put this plan together and he wants you to make sure that even if he sells the team, that he owns the area down there, he wants you to be able to trust him. And that's one of the worst things to ask the city, the county, and the people here in the Tampa Bay area to trust you, because you haven't earned that trust. You don't deserve to be trusted. And I'm not just talking about Stu. I'm talking about any entity in life. I have this conversation a lot with our guy Tom Ponzo at the Dignitary Tea in Cava House, and I don't like the word deserve. You don't deserve anything in this life. You earn it. Jeffrey Vinnick has earned your money. He's earned your attention. He's earned your trust. He's earned your benefit of the doubt. Even the Glazers, and I know it's weird to say that because if you're a fan of this team right here, you were like, how the hell could you ever trust the Glazer family? But here in the Tampa Bay area, the only thing you're worried about is that the Glazers are signing the checks and putting people like Jason Light and Todd Bowles and all these guys in a position to where that they can do their jobs and keep this team competitive and relevant. So yes, people in the Tampa Bay area, they trust. They trust the Glazers. And I think I speak for Bucks Nation when they say they've earned that trust. We can't say the same thing about Stu. And I know people are going to go, oh, well, it's unfair to compare him to Jeff Vinnick. He's one of the greatest owners in sports. Whether it's fair or not, it's real. We live in a comparative life, comparative society. That's just the way it is. We all don't have short-term memory loss. We all remember what our last job was like compared to your current job, and your last girlfriend to this girlfriend, and your last car and your last house to this car and this house. It's just the way it is. That is how we make better decisions for the future, is because we use all of the information that we've gleaned in our lifetime to make better decisions. So hopefully we don't make the same mistakes again. That's what we do. We compare and we contrast. And when you look at the Stu Sternberg situation and you hear some of these comments, it just makes you shake your head, because even if you want, and I want to be one of those people, I want to defend Stu Sternberg. I want to be one of those beacons of hope and light and positivity and optimism, because there's people that are going to hate and crap all over Stu regardless, whether they have all the information or not. I want to be one of those people. I wanted to be one of those guys that you can look to and be like, all right, I feel real crappy about this situation. Jay, give me some positivity. But when I read these things, I'm not going to sit there and tell you that it's freaking beautiful outside when we're in the middle of a thunderstorm, because I value my transparency and honesty. And when you look at some of these things that he said, right? Sternberg said Wednesday that they keep waiting to see what solutions are proposed. The Rays thrust the stadium deal into question by saying delays in improving the bonds to fund the city and county portions forced the team to push back the construction timeline to 2029 and incur significant additional cost of around $150 million that they cannot absorb alone. It's wild that he can say that. And again, this is coming from the article from Mark Topkin from the Tampa Bay Times. But it's wild that he can say that when we had the discussion with Colleen Wright, also of the Tampa Bay Times, and people that know about this deal are still wondering where they get that additional cost of $150 million. Where, by putting it and pushing it back 1 year, are they going to incur that much more money to have to get this thing done? Where do they get these numbers? And that's why when you talk about trust and transparency, you look at that, you're like, I don't know. Stu goes on to say, having the money and putting it in are two different things. We can get a hold of the money. Does it make any sense to do it? That's really it. What? What are we even talking about here, Stu? Having the money and putting it in are two different things? So you're telling me if you have the money, you don't know if you're going to commit to the new stadium? When Ken Welch, the mayor of St. Pete, has been putting his ass on the line for you? When the county commissioners and the city council have been working hard? When people in the Tampa Bay area and the St. Pete area and everybody are trying to support this entire deal? When you were at Tropicana Field last year celebrating this whole thing? We took the entire press conference live on WDAE. We went into work 2 hours early to broadcast this thing because we thought we were finally at a point going forward that finally we were going to see shovels in the ground at some point. In the first quarter of 2025 is what we were told. And now Stu Sternberg is telling us having the money and putting it in are two different things. We can get a hold of the money, but does it make any sense to do it? Really? Really? If you aren't sure about your money going into this deal, why the hell do you expect anybody else to come back and help you out? Look at what your worth is. Look at what your net worth is. If Stu really wanted to get this done, he would find people, he would find investors, he would find minority owners, he would find different entities to say, come hell or high water, we're going to get this stadium built. And when it gets built, it's going to be better for all of us that put the money in. It's going to be better for the region as a whole. And it's going to be better for this baseball team. But the fact that this dude is getting cold feet and he's got less than 60 days to pull this whole thing together, I do not have much optimism that it's going to get done. So if you're coming to me for some positivity when it comes to the stadium deal, you're going to have to go somewhere else. And if you know me, I'm not gloom and doom. I'm not one of those people that is overly pessimistic. Life is too short to live like every single day you feel like when you walk across the street, you're going to get hit by a car. I don't live like that, but I live in reality. And when you hear some of these things that Stu Sternberg has said about this stadium deal very recently, I just don't know as a Rays fan if you can have optimism that this thing is going to get done. It's sad. It's sad as hell because we thought that we were farther along than this. Stu says, I'm not saying a decision or this or that, but I'll be prepared coming out of this meeting and speaking to the owners here. There's a lot that goes into it. I don't know what the rush is for anybody or for us. If this is, in fact, a multi-generational decision, I don't think anybody will care if it's a date in January, February, or March. Stu, you're the person that is saying that there's a time crunch. You're the person that's saying that $150 million more it's going to cost because the stadium needs to be ready for 29 instead of 28. So come on, man. Like, it doesn't take a lawyer to read through the fine print to kind of just navigate through some of these things that he's saying. Oh my God. I read this stuff and I cringe. I cringe listening to what this guy has to say. I cringe reading these articles from Mark Topkin Mark is such a great writer. But I cringe when I see these things. How do you not feel like the time is ticking on the Tampa Bay Rays being here in the Tampa Bay area? That would be a death knell for this franchise. Rob Manfred doesn't want to leave this TV market. Sucks, man. Mikey, if 600,000 people put $5,000 in each, we can own the Rays and distribute the profits to each other, make decisions together, and stand together in front of the lawmakers and local government united front. Almost like the Green Bay Packers. Let's try to do something like that. Listen, anything is better than what we have right now. David Terry says, Jordyn Reed has a better outlook to life than Stu Sternberg. If you missed the interview with Jordyn Reed yesterday, I think one of my favorites of the entire year, to hear that young man, sophomore for the USF basketball team, talk about loss and talk about how he has just dealt with this entire situation with Amir Abdur-Rahim passing on. I was inspired by his speech yesterday. I was inspired by what he was saying. And please, I'm begging you guys, if you have an opportunity, and you know there's very few things that would make me miss a game to go watch these guys play. It sucks to not be there tonight at Amalie Arena because, I never like missing Lightning games. But if I'm going to miss a Lightning game, it is going to be for a reason like tonight, where I'm going to go to the YC and I'm going to go cover this game at the Yuengling Center, because it is a night where the American Athletic Conference and the University of South Florida will honor the late, great Amir Abdur-Rahim. And you see I'm rocking the shirt today. This ain't the same old South Florida, my brother. And you know that for sure. Love wins. That is something that he spoke about many, many times. To God be the glory. And tonight, it'll be a love wins whiteout. Everybody that goes there, I'm pretty sure, is going to get a white t-shirt and a whiteout tonight as USF takes on Temple. And we know Temple tough. But Amir Abdur-Rahim, whose legacy and whose impact will be felt for many, many years past just the season that he was here with us here in Tampa, which is wild to think that he was a guy that was only here for one season. And yeah, they won a conference championship, which is fantastic. And to be able to be on the court there at the Yuengling Center to watch Amir cut down the nets, to watch Michael Kelly cut down the nets, and the players getting up on that ladder. Amir said that in his introductory press conference. I hope you're not afraid of heights, MK. And in his first season, he delivered a conference championship. Now, of course, they fell short. They went to the NIT. Fell short of making the NCAAs, and they went to the NIT. But still, postseason basketball for USF. They were able to win a game, beat UCF. That's never a bad thing. Before they lost. And regardless of the impact that he had on the court, but you're talking about the impact that this man had in our community, on the campus as a whole over at USF. What an indelible impact and impression that he's had. Still, to this day, it's still being felt. And you listened to Jordyn Reed yesterday. And again, if you missed it, don't check it out now, only after the show. Go back and listen to that entire interview. The spirit of Amir Abdur-Rahim lives on through people like Jordyn Reed. And when you watch him attack the hoop tonight, just remember that the gentleman that instilled the confidence in that young man, that freshman from Westbury, Long Island, New York, was Amir Abdur-Rahim. So again, rocking the t-shirt today. Go USFBulls.com. There's so many big things going on. I mean, you just listen to all of the different events that are going on at USF this weekend. We've got softball today at 2:30. Then they play again at 5 o'clock. Men's basketball tonight at 7. You've got track and field. You got women's tennis. Tomorrow, you have the first ever lacrosse game for USF. And how exciting is that going to be? The first game in history. The USF Bulls taking on Kennesaw State at 7 o'clock. I'll actually be on the call over on Bulls Unlimited for USF in Michigan, number 22 in the country, at 4:30 as part of the USF Rawlings Invitational. So 2 softball games today for the Bulls. Tomorrow at 4:30, I'll be on the call on Bulls Unlimited. go to gousfbulls.com. That's so you can find out how to listen. And then I'm walking across the street to Corbett Stadium to watch the first ever lacrosse matchup between USF and Kennesaw State. It's history. You want to be a part of history. And the green and gold just continues to build and continue to have a lot of great people involved. And National Signing Day was yesterday. USF brings a couple of players in, which was good, a pair of defenders. And it wasn't going to be one of those signing classes so much different now than what we've seen in years past because of the transfer portal and early enrollees. Like, it's just completely different. But they brought in Dorian Mallory, a 5'11" player from Fort Myers. So a good D back there, and a defensive lineman, Richard Scott, 6'4", 245. So good stuff from the USF Bulls, and we're hoping that they can build on years 1 and years 2 under Alex Golesh. Obviously, we know what happened last year with Byron Brown being out. And there was a lot of talk of where Byron Brown was going to go. Would he transfer? And we haven't heard anything from Byron Brown yet. So I'm going to actually ask around over the next couple of days and see where his future lies. But we will have Alex Golesh on the program next week. We got big guests on the show. That is how we roll. February 11th, so Tuesday at 12:10, Alex Golesh, USF head football coach, will join us on the program to talk about Byron Brown, to talk about this National Signing Day class, all the people that they were able to bring in from the transfer portal, because college football is so incredibly different now. I mean, we're seeing so much player movement. It's exciting. It's fun. Another thing I wanted to touch on, my guy John Sabol is going to join us in about 3 minutes here. The NFLPA remarked yesterday there in New Orleans, and this is from the NFLPA Executive Director Lloyd Howell Jr. He says that no one wants to play an 18th game. Oh, Lloyd. No one wants to play an 18th game. 17 games is already, for many of the guys, too long. 17 games is also so lengthy that you're still dealing with injuries going into the next season. So there are a variety of issues that hang off of the length of the season before any formal negotiations. And then he goes on to talk about, oh, well, we got to talk about bye weeks. And he said several issues would have to be addressed before any true negotiations could be opened into expanding the season. He cited the number of bye weeks, roster size, practice squad size, the length of the offseason, and the number of international games played, which the CBA currently caps at 10. Well, here's what I'm going to tell you, Mr. Howell. 18 games is coming whether you like it or not. The CBA expires after the 2030 season. I'd be very surprised if when the 2031 season starts that we're not talking about an 18-game season. You know that all those things that he mentioned, he's not going to get all of them. He may get some of them. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do go to an 18-game season if they went to a 20-week schedule. Go to a 20-week schedule, have 2 byes, expand the rosters. What's the difference from going 53 to 55 or 53 to 60? Another 4 or 5 guys on the practice squad. To me, whatever. The revenue is always going up for this league. What's the sense in stopping it? The international games, capping at 10, that's going to go up too. Get games in Australia. Now next year, you got games in Germany and England. Like it's happening all over the globe. And you want to continue to have more money for these players. You want to make sure that you can pay these extra guys that are going to be on your roster and these extra guys that are going to be on your practice squad. Well, you have to continue to bring in those revenue streams. And one way to do that is by going into different markets and going into Australia and going into all different parts of the country, all different parts of the world. Forget about the country. We've seen games in Mexico, right? You're going to go to South America again. You're going to go to Africa. You're going to go somewhere in Asia. Like these things, the NFL is no longer just an American brand. It's a global brand. So if you think you're stopping at 17 games, it's not happening. It's 18 games. It'll be 18 games. It'll be 20 weeks, and then they'll go from there. Josh Grizzard speaking right now, the new Buccaneers offensive coordinator over at the Advent Health Training Center at One Buccaneer Place. Grizzard says he did discuss with Todd Bowles during his interview about having call-up periods over the offseason to get him more play-calling experience. Bowles did the same thing with Dave Canales in 2023. I like that. One thing that we saw last year that we didn't see as much from Todd Bowles and Dave Canales was we saw a lot of cohesion with Liam Cohen and Todd Bowles, where they would kind of walk down the sidelines together, and it wasn't micromanaging. They were just kind of chatting back and forth. Hey, what are we looking at here? What are we going to do? I like that. I think that's when you're working together, that is the only way that you're going to be successful. Speaking of success, this guy is all about success. Let's bring him in now. My good pal. I miss him very much. The one and only John Sabol from up there, Fox 8 News up in Cleveland. What's up, my brother? How are you?
What's up, man? It's been a hot minute. How you been?
I'm good, man. Way too long. Before we start, give my love to the entire Sabol clan. I miss you guys, including your crazy brother. Does he still have the beard?
No, after that 0-16 season, I think the day after the final game, now our boss, because I work there, so they're like, okay, now you gotta shave it off. But what's crazy to think about, that was almost 9 years ago.
Oh my gosh, man!
You believe it?
That time has certainly flown. And if John Sabol sounds familiar or looks familiar, we used to see him here at ABC Action News, now with Fox 8 News up there in Cleveland. And one thing I always tell people when it comes to a responsible professional and the way to keep a straight face was that you had to go on local news right after your beloved Cleveland Cavaliers won the championship and speak about the shootings in Orlando. And I remember being at a bar with a friend of mine, and I was like, so happy for you. And the games were on ABC. And I remember being at the bar, and the first person on the news after was you. And I'm like, that dude's a professional. I told everybody at the bar, like, my guy right here. And I told him the whole story, and everybody was like clapping, like, this guy's the man. He's awesome.
Well, I appreciate that. And I remember you texted me that night congratulating me on the Cavs. But it was a surreal moment for me at that moment because, I'm in the sports office there at ABC Action News celebrating. But then it's like, wait a second, I got to quickly write this.
Right.
And then talk about the unfortunate Pulse nightclub shooting there in Orlando. So, like, the Cavs championship, as great as it was, personally, and I'm a little selfish about this, I didn't get a chance to really live it and love it that much because of what you said there. But it was still awesome. Like it was an incredible run, but I wish I could have had a better, experience to embrace it than to have it damper under that sad situation that we had to talk about there in Orlando.
Yeah. And I also brought up you a couple weeks ago, we were up in the Buccaneers press conference, and I spoke about the time where I went to the UFC event in New York City, and I got on a plane at like 6 a.m. I didn't sleep, and I went right to the Bucs game the next day. And I said, the crazy part about that is my guy John Sabol did the same thing. It was either the week before, where you went to the World Series game in Cleveland, and then flew right back and went to the Bucs game the next day. That was probably a crazy 48 hours for you too, as well.
Oh man, Jay, it was nuts because it was Game 7 of the 2016 World Series. The Indians had a 3-1 lead and blew it. We all know what happened, but my sister got tickets, and my mom and my dad went. My brother was working. He was super jealous still to this day that we went to the game. But we were all thinking it was going to be a cool experience. I finally get to see a championship with my dad. He grew up big Cleveland sports fan. And then obviously that happened. But then I had to hop on a flight like at 7 a.m. to get back to Tampa because that was a Wednesday. And the Bucs had a Thursday night game. I want to say they played the Falcons.
Yeah.
And by the time we got back home from downtown Cleveland, it was probably close to 1 or 2 in the morning. And I'm just like, even though they lost, you're still adrenaline's high from that moment. And I slept on the couch. I didn't even go in my bed at my parents' house. My dad woke me up. All right, we got to go. Take you to the airport. We both got like an hour or so sleep.
Yeah.
But man, it's crazy. And you experience the same thing. It's crazy what sports will do for you when you are, channeling your fandom, but then you balance it with work. And my dad used to always say, you play hard, you're going to work hard. And so, yourself, you get into and embrace the chaos. And you and I both did in those situations. You
got that right, buddy. And now some chaos for your Cleveland Browns. I know it's been a tough putt over the last couple of years, and you've been, lockstep and keeping an eye on everything. And God, what was the kind of the overall impression of Myles Garrett when he comes out and he says that I think my time is done here in Cleveland? Did it come as a surprise? Did it come as a shock? And how do you think this whole thing is going to unfold now?
Jay, it's weird because if you go back before Christmas, I believe it was before the Dolphins game, the date was like December 20th. Myles said something along the lines of, like he wants to play for a winner and doesn't want to be a part of a rebuild. And, he kind of went off, which was very unlike him because he kind of keep things in house, internalizes. And has been a model citizen, I guess you could say, throughout his entire 8 years with the organization. And it kind of raised a lot of eyebrows, like, okay, like he means business. He's sick of losing, he's sick of, the turmoil. And, he said, oh, I'll sit down and have a conversation with Browns general manager Andrew Berry in the front office after the season, see where they go. He had a conversation, and then it kind of like turned in early January. It seemed like where he's like, you know what, we're not that far off. This is Miles saying this. We're not that far off. We have a couple pieces that we need, and I want to be a Brown. And he said that in that December 20th press conference, and he said all the right things. And then Andrew Berry came out a few weeks later at the end of the year press conference that all these NFL teams do once your season is over. And he said a line that says, we have always envisioned that Myles Garrett has a straight shot from Cleveland to Canton. And everyone's like, okay, well, clearly, like they must have, patched things up. Right. Then Monday, the trade request comes out, which, the Browns, I was told, were not surprised by it. We were only in the media a little bit just because we thought things were okay. Fans were blown away. And then in that statement that he released, which he didn't post it on social media, Jay, he released it to two NFL national writers, and Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter, with that statement. And he said it's never about going from Cleveland to Canton, referencing the Hall of Fame, which was a shot there at the GM, Andrew Berry. It's about winning and getting to the Super Bowl and winning. So at that point, we're like, uh-oh, we got some problems here. Then what happened yesterday on Wednesday on Radio Row at the Super Bowl? He first was outspoken and talked 8 minutes with Rich Eisen show about it, and then subsequently went on like multiple shows since then, and doubled down on his trade request, which now everyone was the majority of Browns fans sided with Myles Garrett. Now you're seeing a slight turn a little bit here because of throwing more salt in the wound, and kept talking about it yesterday constantly, which is not like him. And now fans are like, all right, well then, get out of here type of thing. But their fans, though, to Myles' point, I mean, Myles has great points in a lot of things he said, but the fans are also really angry at the way the organization has held itself with the Deshaun Watson debacle and ownership and everything. So it's been a mess, and a big mess, which we're going to see how this unfolds.
Do you think he can go back to your former home here in Tampa Bay? A lot of people are asking, do you think that'd be an option?
Andrew Berry said at the Senior Bowl last week, when one of the Cleveland reporters, I think it was to The Athletic, said something like, are you going to trade Myles Garrett? And they said no. And they said, well, what about for 2 first-round picks? And Andrew Berry said, not even for 2 first-round draft picks. Now, he says that in passing, so right. A lot can change. So what are you going to give up for him? He wants to go to a contender. Obviously, the Buccaneers are a contender. It's going to come down to what Andrew Berry can recoup in terms of draft capital and compensation, whatever best deal he has. And if the Buccaneers, I think you start at 2 first-round draft picks easily. It doesn't have to be in 2025, in my opinion. It could be 26, 27, maybe mid-selection, maybe an established player, and see where he goes from there. The one issue I would say about the Buccaneers is the Baker Mayfield factor. Baker has grown up quite a bit since his Browns exit, quite a bit. I've got to know his inner circle a little bit over the last few years, especially since his trade to then Carolina. And you and I spoke about that when that happened. And he has grown up a lot. You guys have seen him grow up a lot since he arrived there. So there was some, I would say, not drama, but Myles and Baker, from what I was told, didn't really see eye to eye a lot when they were in Cleveland. Now, people change. People grow up. Could that change? Sure. Could that be a destination? It's all going to be compensation. I'm sure Baker would probably welcome that. But you got to look back at their time together. They did win a big playoff game in Pittsburgh and lost to the Chiefs to a right to go to the AFC Championship game during the COVID year with the Browns, in a game that they almost won. So I think those guys, if it ever got to that point, could put things aside. And I think they both have grown up since then. So it really depends on what other compensation Andrew Berry can get. Now, I know your next follow-up question is, can he get back to Cleveland? Well, here's the thing. Will Myles Garrett come back? Could they patch it up?
Right.
This feels different. Andrew Berry doesn't have to trade him. He's got 2 years left on his deal. Garrett's due for a contract extension. I don't know, what can be said to salvage this. If the Browns want to go in a full rebuild or get compensation for him, now I think it's the time to do it. He'll turn 30 next December. one of the best defensive players in the league, reigning defensive player of the year. He's up for it again tonight at NFL Honors.
Yeah.
So, I think there's a lot of patchwork that has to do here if that can happen. But to me, this feels like a different trade request than we've seen before. And I'm kind of leaning in the trade category as it sits now.
How is everybody kind of rationalizing the whole Deshaun Watson thing? Like, are they just looking at trying to get, whoa, injury? Can we get out of this? Like, it's just, you and I spoke about it. And even then people were like, if he can get back to that Houston guy, that Clemson quarterback, maybe, but it just seems like from afar, man, people aren't surprised that it went down and it's gone down in flames like this.
It's funny, Jay, when we spoke about it the day it happened, when I came on your radio show and about Baker, there was a division of fans here, even still, that love Baker Mayfield. I mean, he was beloved for a lot of, it was like split 50-50. And now I think it's more 75-50. They like him even more after what happened. People thought, put aside Deshaun's off the field issues.
Right.
People anticipated him to lead, to come in and be that player he was with Houston before that year. Before that year, he didn't play. And it just hasn't happened. And frankly, it's not going to happen. The guy is a shell of himself, busted shoulder, Achilles, he ruptured twice, once in October, and he just did it again in rehab. I don't think he'll play a game again for the Cleveland Browns. He will not play next year with that rehab after now being, rupturing a second time. So now you have 1 year left in his deal. There are guys in the locker room that were really irritated, I think, and frustrated, Myles Garrett being one of them. And it's maybe not necessarily Deshaun's fault, so to speak. When he has played, when he wasn't injured, it just was off. Everything was off. And the Browns have gone through now on their third offensive coordinator because of this. So this stemmed from a lot of people blaming the front office and ownership. I think it's ownership all the way. And people are just sick of it. They're done. Everyone is done. There's not one person. I got to say this. People were ripping Cleveland fans when Deshaun got hurt and they were cheering for him when he hurt his when he blew out his Achilles. And it was unacceptable. And Myles Garrett and a lot of people defended their brother and Deshaun. But I think the frustration or the cheering wasn't so much cheering that they got hurt, cheering that they didn't have to see him play anymore because it was been that bad.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. You hope he can come back at some point, whether it's with the Browns or someone else. But, they're going to have a retooled locker or quarterback room next year or this offseason here. And they'll see where they go with that. They'll probably draft one and they'll probably sign someone.
Yeah. And it's funny because like when people were saying that, I said something similar. I don't necessarily know if they were necessarily booing like at the injury. I think they were just booing at the situation. Like, oh my God, this is the next, of course, something like this would happen. So those jeers weren't directly just at him, but just the situation and the ownership. So you said sign one, draft one. I mean, what names is a Kirk Cousins deal possible? I don't know if that would make a lot of sense because he's got a lot of money. Imagine the amount of money there. Would you bring a guy like Jameis back? Like, what do you see? And if they do draft a quarterback, is that a first round? Is it a second round? What do you think?
Great questions. So let's first start on the free agent market here. The Browns are in cap hell at the moment here with the dead money from Deshaun's contract. And if they trade Myles Garrett, they're going to be taking on $36 million in dead money on his trade if they trade him before June 1st. Okay, just put that out there. That's one of the reasons why they don't want to trade him among his stats and whatever. So now you're looking at quarterback. Okay, Kirk Cousins. Yeah, there's a lot of money owed there. There is a connection with Kevin Stefanski. He was his OC in Minnesota when he played there. They do like him, but will they go that route? It's the money thing is if they can get him, to sign a lesser deal, potentially is out there. There is some smoke on Geno Smith recently, which is kind of surprising. I don't think Jameis comes back. I think they've seen enough. To a point where the final couple games of the year, they gave the keys to the offense to Dorian Thompson-Robinson, which is a second year, fourth, fifth round draft pick kid. And while Jameis had a shoulder injury, that really wasn't an injury. It was more or less like, hey, we're going to give this guy, this kid a shot here. And so I just think they're going to have to go with another free agent at some point. Who that is, we just don't know yet. I mean, it's just going to come down to that. In terms of drafting a quarterback, if you could read between the lines just a little bit, and we can assume that Myles Garrett does not want to be a part of a rebuild with a young quarterback. Okay, look at the Browns. They're going to have to draft one. Yeah. And so if you are going to assume that he puts this trade request in after talking with the front office, then you're going to assume they're going to draft one. Obviously, it's not a shock to anybody. Where is it going to be? Number two, there's a lot of connection to Shedeur Sanders because the Browns hired a quarterback coach in Musgrave who's got connections with Dion. There's some maybe thought process. They go that route. Is Cam Ward going to be available at number two? I talked to former Browns legendary quarterback and former Miami Hurricanes quarterback Bernie Kosar quite a bit here. We do a pregame show with him during this football season at Fox 8. And he loves Cam Ward, not because he went to Miami for the year, but because he thinks his style fits Kevin Stefanski's offense. Now, Will the Titans take him at one? Will he even be on the board? Who knows? But if they don't take a quarterback number one, do they go Abdul Carter, Penn State edge rusher? Then do they take a quarterback later? Like a guy like Jackson Dart. What about Will Howard? I mean, it is the options are endless. The questions are endless. And it's just so early here on February 6th that we just aren't sure of where this can go. But I think you can assume wherever it's going to happen, they will have 2 new quarterbacks in that room next year.
John, before I let you go, of course, we got to get some hoops in, buddy. I mean, your Cavs are freaking flying. They're all over the place. Deals galore with Luka and AD. We see Jimmy Butler getting traded last night to the Golden State Warriors. Does Golden State make a move now? Like, what do they? Does Cleveland now make a move? I mean, the East is that top tier. My Knicks. I'm glad that they're up. Look at our teams both competitive at the same time. We haven't had that in our friendship, I don't think.
It's funny covering the Cavs playoffs 2 years ago at the Knicks when they beat them was kind of a surreal moment. Because I'm thinking, man, the Knicks are back, baby. They're back.
It's better for the sport. It's better even if they don't win. Just having them in there, and even if you beat them, like when the team beats them, it's like, hey, you beat the Knicks, world's most famous arena. Do they make any deals? Because I mean, right now, you look at Donovan Mitchell, you look at the guys they have down low. I mean, Mobley's he's a freak, man. He's such a good player. And I really like the makeup of the team. Do they have to make a move now to really fortify their spot in the East? Because regardless of what their record is, I'm still terrified of Boston. They have that championship pedigree.
Yeah, the Cavs played Boston 3 times or 1 and 2 against them. In those 2 games they've lost, they've shot the ball poorly. I think Boston is beatable, but you also have to get them on a really good night too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that next step you got to get over. Boston's, I think, despite the Cavs run here, they're still the favorite, I think, in the East.
Agreed.
So we got as we are sitting here recording live here, it's 12:57. We got 2 hours left to go to the deadline. The Cavs have had multiple talks with a lot of teams. I know they sent an offer over to the Brooklyn Nets for Cam Johnson. That hasn't materialized yet. They were looking at seeing what they can use as leverage. I think the Nets deal for Cam Johnson would be great. But the problem is I think the Nets have no urgency to move him yet, so they could wait till the offseason. You look at another guy like DeAndre Hunter. That's the big name here with the Atlanta Hawks. Similar position, similar style of play like Cam Johnson in terms of his height and weight and everything, and his stats are very similar. Cavs are really interested in him. They have pieces to send, Jay, but it's weird because they're not pieces that are going to wow you. Yeah. I mean, the names that we keep hearing in trade talks is Isaac Okoro, offensive limitations, one of the best perimeter defenders, but he's also hurt now. You look at Jalen Tyson, the rookie first-round draft pick who's gotten a lot more minutes lately, unknown, but they really like him. I've heard Brooklyn really likes him. And then the other 2 other guys that you can throw in deals like Karis LeVert expiring contract, but he's been dealing with a wrist injury all season, and he hasn't been 100%, and his offensive numbers are awful recently. And then if you look at George Niang too, who's having a decent year, those 4 guys are pieces that are looking at being in a potential trade, but that kills your depth and it kills some of your wing defenders or defense. So do they make that move? Is it going to put them over the edge? I don't think it's necessary. I look at them not want to rock the boat too much with chemistry.
Right.
Who knows? They're going to change, go make a deal 5 minutes after we get off here. Right. But,
right.
I think what they'll probably do, I think they stand pat. And I think they may get someone on the buyout market as big because they need big depth. Like Larry Nance Jr. is a guy I think they would look good if they could get him. He's a local guy. He's from Cleveland here. His dad played for the Cavs.
Right.
But it's interesting. We'll see where they go. But it's crazy to see how many All-Stars have been traded in this before the deadline. And today so far has been relatively quiet.
Yeah, I know Mark Williams now going to the, from one coast to the other coast. Now he's the Lakers. Dalton Connect, who was a great star last year at Tennessee. Everybody's like, wow, this is going to be. But then I said, you bring in Luka. What the hell do you need Dalton Connect? You got Austin Reeves too, man. So, yeah, I expect we would say, wow, look at all the trades, expect a flurry before the deadline. But sometimes, like you just alluded to, we see this in baseball probably more than any sport, where you have so many deals the day before, and then the day of, you're like, it's just a little, relief pitcher here and a relief pitcher there.
Right. Absolutely. It's funny because like in some years you get an active deadline in all the sports. I forget what year it was when the year the Lightning traded and got Ryan Callahan for Marty St. Louis. And if you look at that list of deals in the NHL, were just unbelievable that day. And that's in the NHL, but you get days like that, in all these sports. So, the NBA is kind of down at the moment in terms of ratings and everything. And I think some of these splashes may put some more eyes on the product.
I like it.
We'll see what happens, but playoffs are going to be really exciting, I think, this spring.
Regardless of what happens, you and I are definitely going to be watching. Make sure you check him out on social media. John_Sabol, Fox 8 News up there in Cleveland. Of course, we remember him, ABC Action News here. Give Alyssa my love, the entire family. Appreciate your time, my brother. Always great to catch up, and have a great rest of your week, my man.
You too, man. I told Alyssa I was hopping on with you, and she said to say hi, and hope all is well down there in Tampa. Miss you guys, and miss covering those teams down there. We had a great time and great run, that's for sure.
Well, make sure you hit me up when you guys come visit, brother.
Absolutely, buddy. Take care. Thanks for having me on, Jay.
You got it, man. Thank you. John Sabol, Fox 8 there in Cleveland, does such a great job up there, and just an all-around great dude overall. Trying to get a hold of Jordyn Listro right now, and she tries to pop on. Can you download? And then delete when we're done. All right. She's just trying to pop on here. It's tough when I'm sending these links out to get people on the show. Sometimes they got to pop on using like Google Chrome or Safari. It's tough when you're using the different things there. If you missed what Eric Erlinson had to say yesterday about Isaac Howard, and I brought this up and I just said this to somebody earlier today. If I'm the Lightning, there is no way I'm not going out and trying to get a guy like Isaac Howard. Bring him into the fold. Let's make it happen. All right, we're going to make this happen too. We got her. Jordyn Listro joins us on the program. You got it figured out. We're all good.
We're all good.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are things? How's your week going?
Good. Just prepping for our game on Saturday. We're all super excited about it.
I mean, how crazy is it like when you guys saw the initial schedule knowing like, wow, we're going to have this big break in between and like a first part and the second part? Like, how did you mentally kind of wrap your head about that, knowing that there was going to be a break in the middle?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of nice. Honestly, we are taking it in two different sections, and the first half of the season was kind of up and down for us, but we got to regroup and everyone kind of went their separate ways over the Christmas break, got to spend time with family and friends, which was much needed. And then we come back kind of energized and refreshed and ready to kick off the next couple months.
What was that first game like? I mean, it's something that I'll never forget, like being there with my girlfriend and her two daughters and just feeling like it was a part of history in the Tampa Bay area, knowing that this was the first female, team here in the Bay Area, and to just be there. Of course we want to win, right? But it doesn't, like, at the end of the day, it's not about like historical perspective of the win. It's about just you guys really broke ground. Like, you broke barriers that day. When you look back on that initial game right there, like what are going to be some of your favorite memories?
Yeah, honestly, it was a dream come true. I mean, going to school at USF and then being able to play professionally in Tampa. I'm just so passionate about this city. And so to see all the little girls and boys come to our game, and now, they can look at us and have a dream that they can achieve later on. I mean, yeah, we made history. The game itself was pretty hectic, but that's okay. It was still a good memory.
That's right. What about Coach Denise Schulte-Brown, who I love? Like, she's a firecracker, man. Every time I'm around her, she's always like slapping me or making jokes. Like, she don't stop. Was there a different side of her for now? Like, was it the same coach the entire time? Like, has she changed at all, going from the college to the pro ranks?
I haven't been with her in a couple years, but I mean, she's still the same person. She's still super competitive. And, she motivates us all. I think she's unique in that aspect. If she really believes in you as a person and player and instills confidence in you to allow you to perform at your best. So she's the same in that regard.
Jordyn, during the break, did you train? Were you allowed to train with the team? Did you guys stay together? Did you do individual training? Like, how did that whole thing go?
Yeah, you kind of got to do whatever you wanted to do. We had a program that was sent to us. Me and a few of my teammates actually went down to Fort Lauderdale and trained at the training center called The Ground with 2 former MLS players, Recher and Jeff Cameron. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, they have a great thing going over there, and definitely pushed us for the 2 to 3 weeks we were there.
Yeah, I always like the name Breck, Brek. I was like, that's a pretty cool name. I'm a big fan. And Jeff Cameron, not your traditional Jeffgeoff. I'm weird like that. Spellings for me, that's just my thing. When you're looking at the standings of what the first half was like, right? And I look back at it today and I go, yeah, okay, you're just under the line of making the playoffs, but you have a game in hand that got rescheduled. You win that game, like you're right there. You're in second place. So how is the feeling of the team knowing, like, all right, maybe it was a little bit of an up and down first part of the season, but you know that you're within striking distance to really be at the top and put yourself in a position to make the postseason?
Yeah, I think we have to take it game by game. I think we can't get ahead of ourselves. I think the first half of the season, we knew we had a good roster, and we were projected to finish like first or second. So I think we just need to stay focused on each game and not look at the big picture right away.
What there's been a lot of player movement that I've noticed. Like it was pretty surprising to me because I wasn't sure, and I think I wonder if that's going to happen like years down the line now. But there's been players that like go back on loan. You bring people in. Like, was that something that you guys were anticipating, that there was going to be a lot of player movement during the season?
Not really. I mean, we did get a couple players on loan, and then now we have new players that have signed, and the other players have gone back to their clubs. But I mean, the players that we had on loan were awesome and great additions. And then these new signings that we have are also great. So I think we lucked out with both.
I remember when you joined us in studio back when I was working at iHeart, you and Erica Timrak, I mean, you and I told you guys were the faces of this whole thing, right? Like the first time that you guys did any kind of media whatsoever, you joined us, and that's something that people are always going to remember. They're always going to, attribute you and the Tampa Bay Sun. How is that? How is Erica Timrak, and like, how have you guys like grown as friends, as teammates, and not just you two, but everybody else since you first met them?
Yeah, it's so different because I've never been on a team where every single person is brand new. So it's a unique experience. But I think the coaching staff, recruiting, not only as players, but people, I think we have a really special group of people, and we all really get along on and off the field. And yeah, of course, I played with Erica in Orlando, so it's nice having her on the team. And then some of my teammates from USF I'm reunited with, so it's been pretty special.
How would you analyze your game in the first part of the season? I mean, it's hard to keep track of you sometimes because you're running from one end to the other, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I wonder if I ever played soccer, like where would I be? Because I played hockey growing up and I was a defenseman, and I was like, I don't know if I would be a defenseman. Like I think I would more be like I'd be probably a CDM, but I would be a guy that would probably try to get up on the play more because I didn't want to just stand there while everybody else is doing the action. So how would you assess your game in the first part?
Yeah, I think I got asked to play a couple different positions, which has been great. I mean, I'm just willing to help the team in any way that I can. Obviously, I'm most comfortable in the midfield, so being back there has been better for me, I think. The qualities that I have are better suited for that position. And I just want to keep growing, and I think help in the attack as much as I can in the second half of the season.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things, and one of the things that I've tried to do is, soccer's such a growing sport, right? And you see all the stuff behind me with you guys and the Rowdies, and I was talking to Christina Uncle the other day. It's important to educate people in the Tampa Bay area that don't know so much about soccer. So, like, hey, you may be interested more now than you were in the past, especially with the World Cup coming up, and our U.S. men's and women's team really, like, the women, of course, have been a powerhouse for so long, but the men, like, it's also important for them to kind of raise their status with the new coach, with Pochettino being there. What have you noticed as far as like the education of the game and kind of just like the growing of getting more and more people involved? Do you feel like not a pressure, but do you feel like a responsibility of like introducing new soccer fans into the game?
I just think that the growth of the game is incredible. I mean, where it was 10 years ago to where it is now, especially on the women's side.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy to see, and it's amazing for those girls that are young right now. I mean, they have a path forward, and the city of Tampa has really rallied behind us. I mean, we have a great crowd. And so if we're able to inspire younger generations to play and then play professionally, or even just people in Tampa, I think that they're excited to come to our games. It's fun. So, yeah, I hope that we can encourage more people to be soccer fans.
Yeah, you're doing a great job in doing that. Who was your favorite player growing up? Who was inspiring to you?
I'm Canadian, so Cara
Mhm.
Ling for me
Yeah.
was my idol and forever will be. Yeah.
Did you ever meet her?
Yeah, I used to go to all her games and ask for her hair elastic after. Probably pretty gross, but wore it every game. And yeah, I mean, now we're friends. So
That's so cool. What about outside of soccer? Who were your inspirations, whether it's in sports or out of sports? Who drove you to be kind of the best you can be?
yeah, I think my grandfather was like my biggest fan, and he actually came from Italy to Canada and started his own business and just had the mentality of like working really hard. And I think that that was given to me, and that's just something that I always try to focus on, is just being the hardest worker on the field and giving my 100% every time I'm out there.
What kind of music are you listening to get ready for the game? Are you one of those like intense, like, heavy metal or hardcore hip hop,
Mhm.
or are you just like easygoing? Like, which side of the spectrum are you on for music?
I think I like bounce between. I love Drake, so that's
Mhm.
definitely like if I need to be pumped up. But sometimes I just like country or slower things because I'm I have a lot of energy. So I think that sometimes I just need to calm down and listen to some slower things.
If you could invite any three people, dead or alive, to dinner
Oh,
tonight, who would it be?
this is so hard.
Oh, it's not that hard. You're smart.
No.
You're all over it.
um, I love Rihanna, so probably
Okay.
her. And
Riri in the house.
yes. And then my favorite soccer player growing up was Fabio Cannavaro from
Oh,
the
wow.
Italian national team. So
Okay.
probably him. And then third one. Hmm. I don't know a third one.
We can just leave the chair open.
Yeah, true. Surprise
I like
me.
it. Just it's only three people. Yeah, whoever wants to show up. I know your husband is a golfer, and listen, when you get two athletes together, I always love to see it. And a bunch of my friends that professional athletes and their wives or their husbands are professional athletes. Like there is something about the discipline. There's something about the consistency that that's what brought you together. What is, without getting too personal, like what are some of the common threads as athletes that attracted you guys together? Because I'm going to do a podcast one day on how people met, because I think
Yeah.
that's such a great story of like how couples met. And when I see two athletes come together, I'm just thinking like they probably are so disciplined, they see eye to eye, even if they're in different sports.
Yeah, I mean, we both respect each other's sports. They're obviously very different, but they both involve a lot of travel. So we don't really see each other that much, but we know that we both want to achieve a certain goal and we're not going to stop until we get there. So we both support each other in that aspect. And I think that we're both very routine oriented. Like
Mm.
I plan out my day to a T, and so does he. So it works. We're both like, okay, we're waking up at 7 o'clock. We're leaving the house at 7:30. You're going to the gym. I'm going to training. Like we have a really good routine. And yeah, I think we just both are each other's biggest fans, and it works really well.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because you and I have been talking about getting you on for a couple of weeks because you were so disciplined and making sure that I have workouts. And I love that. And I think part of that goes into, and you said your grandfather, is that who you got that from? Like, because that stuff starts at an early age, right? Like you have to be disciplined to the point of like being on time, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to achieve your goals.
Yeah, I think it started too. I was put into a really competitive environment as a child with like the Canadian national team, the youth teams, and they just had really high standards. I mean, you had to be there on time or you weren't playing, or you had to do certain things off the field in order to compete. And so I think that environment kind of created the routine based lifestyle that I have now.
So what do you do outside the routine? What's your favorite thing? If like you have a night off, you don't have to do anything, you don't have to train. What's the all right, this is what I'm gonna do.
Well, the nice thing about being in Tampa is I'm reunited with a lot of my college friends.
Right.
So I'm able to try new restaurants or, go to dinner with them. And then I love going to the beach. So whenever I get the chance to do that, I love going to Pasta Grill.
Oh, that's our beach. That's the beach that we go to. We love Paso Grill. It's amazing. The sunsets on Paso Grill, I think, are some of the best in the world. Forget about best in the country. What are
Agreed.
some of the restaurants locally? Have you been to Boulan by Emily?
Yeah, I like that one. I like
Amazing.
Predolina by there. My favorite all-time restaurant in Tampa, though, is Olivia. I love Olivia. And I'm Italian, so I'm pretty picky, but Olivia is amazing.
I cannot believe you just said that because
Why?
Olivia is where me and my girlfriend went on our first date. It was a
Ooh.
blind date, and not a blind date because we met through like a mutual friend. But the first time that we ever went out was to Olivia, and I remember it to this day, sitting there and watching her walk in the door, and it was just like my life changed.
Aw.
And yeah, we go there for our anniversary. It's in March. We go every single year to
Love
Olivia. If you've never been to Olivia, go, and if they have the short rib tagliatelle or something, whatever it is, get the short rib, whatever. That's what I get every time because it is you can't order anything bad there, right?
No, you
Like,
can't. You
it's
can't.
amazing. And it's so cool because the way that the tables are set up, there's like a couple two-seaters here and then a bigger table, and you just never know who you're gonna see inside of Olivia. You may see Jordyn Listro, you may see Jay Recher. My buddy went, he saw Pete Alonso from the Mets. Jordyn Listro, check her out on all social media platforms. She's crushing it. Again, I said this to you when we first met. I'm so glad that you're one of the people that are the face of sports for the Tampa Bay Sun because girls are going to look up to you. I got two little ones in this house that look up to you and everybody on the team, and they couldn't have asked to put a better person in this spot. So thank you so much for all that you do. You carry yourself with class and dignity and work ethic. We love watching you running around out there on the pitch, and I have high hopes for you guys in the second half. I know you're going to get into a playoff spot and do some damage. So Jordyn, thank you so much for your time, and best of luck this weekend.
Thank you. See you at a game.
You got it. You'll see me there. TampaBaySunFC.com. Go check out all the information on there. We love the Sun. And of course, shout out to Coach Denise Schulte Brown and the president, Christina Uncle. She's everywhere. If you watch soccer on TV on CBS Sports or Paramount Plus, she's doing a lot of stuff. And I was hanging out with Christina the other night at the sneaker soiree Friday night, and we took a picture together. If you saw it on my social, we were pointing to the Tampa Bay Sun time, and you see it right here. I got the scarf. I got like 4 of them. I have. Oh, don't fall. Please don't fall. I got my flag here. I mean, we are Team Tampa Bay all the way. My Tampa Bay Sun flag. It's no joke, man. We're no joke around here. I just and Rob Higgins from the Tampa Bay Sports Commission came up to me the other day, and he said something that meant so much to me. He goes, "Jay, you love Team Tampa Bay, and that's why I love you." And God, man, you want to talk about like, oh my gosh, I was so honored and grateful that Rob said that about me because nobody cares more about Tampa Bay than Rob Higgins. The reason why we have all these great events, the reason why we have these teams here in Tampa Bay is because of a guy like Rob Higgins. He's amazing. He's amazing. And Team Tampa Bay isn't just some corny slogan, isn't just something like we throw out there and it's like, oh, it's not a big deal. Like, it is a big deal. Like, I'll never forget going to that first Tampa Bay Sun game, sitting there with Steph and the girls and just watching Baker Mayfield there and watching Greg Wolf there and watching Titus O'Neil there and just seeing all these different people supporting the Tampa Bay Sun. And that's what we do here in Tampa Bay. Like, wherever you go, you're going to see people. And there's no better place to live anywhere because you have a burgeoning city that's getting bigger and bigger and all these attractions and all these great people like a Jordyn Listro and it still has that small town feel. It still has that small town vibe where you could go to Olivia or you could go to Boulan or you could go to West Tampa and go get café con leche at Arcoiris. You could do all of these different things, right? And it's Tampa. Nothing beats Tampa. I mean, and I appreciate all you guys out there. David Terry, great interview, Jay. Dan Patrick has nothing on you, Hermano. I appreciate that. But that's the beautiful thing about our town. And that's something that when I got let go at iHeart and I started doing my own podcast, like, this is what I wanted to do. I don't want to be in a position where it's like, I have to talk about the NFL 3 hours every single day. Like, I want to be able to talk about what I want to talk about. So I'm going to talk about the Tampa Bay Sun. I'm going to talk about the Tampa Bay Rowdies. I'm going to talk about the WWE. I'm going to talk about UFC. I want to talk about what I want to talk about. This is my gig. It's the J Recher Podcast, sponsored by the J Recher Podcast. I don't answer to anybody. I want to talk about things because I think it's important to grow the game. I think it's important to have people on like Jordyn Reed yesterday. You can't possibly tell me that a 20-year-old that dealt with tragedy and loss, like Jordyn Reed dealt with losing Amir Abdur-Rahim, you can't tell me that that is not a captivating and a fascinating story that resonates with you. That kid's 20 years old. He had to grow up in the last 6 months quicker than most people have to do in their entire lifetime, because the man that helped get him out of his high school and out of his town in New York on Long Island and brought him here to Tampa, Florida. If anybody knows that journey, it's me. I've done it. I left September 1st, 2005 with my, what was I driving? My Nissan Sentra, limited edition, old school, bought it from an old lady in Plainview. And I drove down by myself from Central Islip, New York to South St. Pete in the hood. I had people coming up to me, asking me, shouting the poke, cuz I was like, I don't smoke cigarettes. I don't know what you're talking about, but okay. And then 2 weeks later, the 3 guys that I moved down with all moved back. So think about that. 20 years old, I moved down here with 3 friends. 2 weeks later, they moved back. They didn't even tell me. They just left. Or they told me actually the day before, hey, we're leaving tomorrow. What do you mean leaving? We're going back to New York. And I was down here by myself. I bet on myself. 52 straight days I worked at a place called Frozen Ropes and went from a part-time guy, and 18 months later, I was the head baseball instructor. Why? Why do I stay here? Why do I live here? Why don't I go to other cities? I've gotten opportunities to go to Charlotte. I've gotten opportunities to go to Seattle and Las Vegas. Why don't you go back to New York? My entire family, everyone, including my mom, right? Everybody, my nephew, Lawson, all of these people, my loved ones, they all live in New York. None of them live here. Why do I stay here? I stay here because of interviews like Jordyn Listro. I stay here because of interviews like Jordyn Reed and Joey Johnston and all of these people here in the Tampa Bay area. I love this place. I love Tampa Bay. Nobody's ever going to take that away from me, and nobody's ever going to deny that. Yes, my old New York ways, those will never leave, because that is what made me who I was, right? Like, that's how I was raised, right? I was raised as a big New York sports fan, but I became a man in Tampa. I became the person that I was supposed to be in the 813, and I wouldn't change that one bit. And people ask too, like, wouldn't you have wanted to get into radio sooner? Like, wouldn't you have wanted to do it at 18 instead of 28? No, not at all. You know why? Because I wouldn't have met this guy right here, Joe Urso, running UT. I wouldn't have met guys like Paul Russo and all the great people that I met coaching baseball for 8 years. I was meant to do that. I was meant to meet Orestes Estrada. I was meant to meet all these different coaches and impact these lives here in the Tampa area. Now those kids are playing pro ball. They're playing college ball. They're growing up. They're having kids of their own. They're having families of their own. Why? Why did I do that? Because this place is special. This is unlike any other city, and I've been all over the country. I've been all over the world covering sports, going to games. There is nothing like the Tampa Bay area. So don't ever take it for granted. And I really hope that nobody ever thinks that I'm one of those guys that, you know, I'm always looking for greener pastures. That's not me. If I ever left here, it would have to be a dream deal, a boatload of money. And even then, like, I never say never, but man, I have shown in these 20 years, and I'm not trying to fluff myself up, but I want you guys to realize that I love this place. And I really want you guys to realize that this is a great place to live. It's unbelievable. So support Jordyn Listro, support the Tampa Bay Sun. Again, go to the website. There's a lot of great information over there, tampabaysunfc.com, and go to the website, and you know what you'll see? You'll see a picture of Jordyn Listro right on the front. And I forgot, damn it, I meant to mention that to her because I saw it this morning when I was just kind of looking up some of the information of when the games were. tampabaysunfc.com. Look at Jordyn about to strike the ball there right on the front. It's a great matchup. It's a crossover event, USL Super League, NWSL. You've got our Tampa Bay Sun taking on New York. Jessica Silva, the main star on the other side. What a great graphic. Sunday, March 2nd, over at the Riverfront Stadium at 6 p.m. Again, Tampa Bay Sun, FC.com. Energize the Bay. The spring schedule is out right now. And let's say you want to learn about the team, the staff, the front office, their identity, recruitment, questions, careers. Tampa Bay Sun, FC.com. They get back in action this weekend, Saturday, February 8th, down there. Oh, it's actually here in Tampa against Fort Lauderdale United, 7 p.m. Girls and Women in Sports Night. We know yesterday was Women and Girls, or Girls and Women in Sports Day. So glad that they are able to have that Saturday night. Next week, Cotton Bowl Stadium against Dallas, in Dallas, against Dallas Trinity FC. And then the February 22nd matchup with Brooklyn FC at the Riverfront Stadium. So plenty of games that you can go to. Their season goes all the way until May 24th. So you've got a couple of months to be able to go out there and support our ladies, the Tampa Bay Sun. Again, Tampa Bay Sun, FC.com. I think I'm one of their number one fans. I was one of the beginning. I was a fan. Do I even have it? Look, I look to the side. I have another Tampa Bay Sun. I got two more Tampa Bay. Two? I have three more Tampa Bay Sun scarves here. I think I got 5. But I also have the scarf before they even named the team. When it was just the USL Super League, when Christina Uncle and Denise Schulte Brown came in. So yeah, a lot of good stuff there. So make sure you go check them out. Tampa Bay Sun FC.com. Mike Frimter, my guy. You have softball roots now, too. Can't go back, homie. You got that right, Mike. I was going to call you yesterday, Mike, because the Pendingos are off to a rough start. 0-2. Our guy Nick in Sarasota made the drive up to help us out, but it was just too little, too late. I was actually on the mound last night. I didn't walk anybody, which was good, but there was just nothing we could do. Just rough go of it. Hopefully we'll get back to it next Wednesday. Shout out to our guy Dolan. We know you love it here too. We love you too, bro. And Monica, we love you, Jay. We love you guys too. Shout out to Monica and the entire clan over there. Follow me on all social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, everywhere. Like and subscribe as well. Some really good stuff coming out of the Advent Health Training Center over at One Buccaneer Place. Josh Grizzard speaking over there and just letting everybody know kind of what he says that he looks at a college a bunch to steal plays and concepts from. He tries to watch as much tape as possible. That's what you want to hear from your play caller, because we know that football is one of those sports that adapts. It's a copycat league. People stealing ideas from other teams, and it's not just in the pros. He just alluded to it. Going down to the college ranks, you look at college football and you wonder, hey, I wonder if that will work. I wonder if that'll work in the pros. And a lot of times it does. It takes some time. And I remember, oh man, running the option, like we never saw that type of stuff. And you look at how the game has grown, especially with these quarterbacks that are running. And that's a topic of conversation that Ian and I had yesterday on the Beckles and Recher podcast. That's, again, up on my YouTube channel. Watch it after this show. But we talked about the changes in the NFL, and we attributed a lot of that conversation yesterday to the Rooney Rule and how it just seems like now the Rooney Rule is just something that people do to check off a box rather than utilizing it for what it was meant to when it was first established in the National Football League, trying to make sure that these minorities would get the opportunities that they weren't getting in the past. And I think it wasn't just coaches. I think it was when you look at quarterbacks as well. And now, whether we can agree or disagree, whether more change needs to happen, and I think that there does. I mean, I don't think it's something that ever needs to stop. It's a conversation that continues to be on the forefront and continues to need to be had. But it's also important to recognize progress where you did have possibly owners, or you did, I don't know if it's possibly, I'm pretty sure it was, you had these owners that were just not comfortable with having an African-American quarterback as the face of their franchise. Now, whether it's through force or whether it was just kind of natural, evolution, now look at the Super Bowl on Sunday. We have Jalen Hurts and we have Patrick Mahomes. A lot of people think the greatest quarterback in the game right now is Lamar Jackson, and you see what Jaden Daniels was able to do this year. So whether it was by was a force or whether it was just something that people have just changed, right? People evolve, people adapt, people become more open-minded. I'm not one of those people that are a firm believer of you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You can change. You're never too old to change. Tom Coughlin changed, and by changing, he became a 2-time Super Bowl champion. You know, my grandfather was a guy that had some very antiquated feelings and thoughts on life overall. And in order for him to be able to have the opportunity to get to know his grandchildren later on in his life, he changed and he adapted and he evolved. And he needs to realize that if you don't, you are going to inhibit yourself from having interactions and relationships with people like your son and your daughter-in-law and your grandkids. So I learned in my life that people can change. And I hope that there's enough examples out there for people to realize that just because people are one way doesn't mean that they're going to be that way forever. It may be hard, but there are examples of people changing. So look at the Tampa Bay Lightning. They didn't want to change their power play, and now they've changed it. I've been telling you, mother, for weeks to get Darren Radish on that power play, and we saw it today at Morning Skate. And we're going to talk Lightning like we do every Thursday with the number one oos. My number one oos, Eduardo Encina. Is that a Macho Man t-shirt?
Yeah, it is.
I'm
trying to get it in. Like my frame is all screwy today.
No, but I mean, listen, I may have problems, but I only saw the upper line and the color of your shirt, and I knew it was a Macho Man. I have a problem. If there is an AA for wrestling fans, I would definitely be the first one to sign up. How we doing, Eddie, in the yard? Eddie on the ice?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Morning skate today. We'll start with the power play because I just mentioned it. I've been saying it to you, to Eric, to everybody. Please put Darren Radish there. Please put him there so we can shoot the puck. If he's aggressive, I said it earlier on the show, if he's aggressive, I think this opens up the power play. At what point, Ed, do you think they just looked at it and said, all right, what we're doing is not enough? Did you see it? I think we saw it the other night, right, when they put Hedman back on there. But, I mean, if you're going to have Radish or Chafee, and that one-timer he took the other night didn't look too great, I think they go back to what they tried to do originally in this, in the season and have those 5 guys out there.
Yeah, I think that, at the end of the day, you need both sides to be a threat, right? And I think it's funny. I was at practice yesterday. I was watching Mitchell Chafee do one-timers, and you can see the difference, right? But just because we saw this tonight, I don't necessarily think that it's going to be a necessarily long-term fix. I think that as it's been all year, this has been a constantly evolving thing with the power play. And one thing that's at hand right now is maybe you do want to mix it up because of who you're facing. You're facing the Ottawa Senators for the second straight game. It's almost like a lot of guys have talked about this in the room of like how this feels a little bit like a playoff series, and not just from the perspective of that. There's my puppy there. He's saying my dog. He's
Hey,
right there. Hey, there's Raleigh Bow.
Raleigh.
Hey Raleigh.
Just chilling. Stay there, no
chilling.
problem. Raleigh threw you off, brother.
not just are these teams close together in the standings, but this does have kind of a playoff feel to it, and in the playoffs, game to game, teams adjust. So I think you'll see both teams adjust a little bit. I think that might be a little bit of what's going on with the power play, but for sure, there's no doubt that Darren Radish has a hell of a shot from that side, through that right-handed one-timer that we haven't seen since number 91 left. And I think early on he was a little hesitant to do that, to unleash that shot, because he was on a power play with all these other guys who are bona fide superstars. Now I think over the course of the season, we've seen more 5-on-5 time from Darren Radish since JJ Mosier got hurt. And I think he's confident in his all-around game more. I think now you put him in there, you're going to see a different guy. And I think that's what we're going to see when you put Radish out there. I think you're going to see him, really kind of establish himself. And it doesn't need to be a thing where he scores when he shoots that shot. It just needs to be something that the penalty kill has to account for. And right. We've seen Alex Ovechkin, I don't know how many times he just pounds you, right? Mm-hmm. One of them, they're going to go in, right? But his strategy is more, I'm going to punish you guys with this shot. And Radish has that kind of shot. And, if we see a little bit more of that, I think that, we'll see a little bit more rejuvenation to the power play. And, this is something that's, I think we're going to see this all year long. And this is one of those changes that we might see tonight. So yeah, I mean, it's the power play has been one of these, narratives all year long that has been up and down. What were they, 0-12, I think, before they scored a goal in the last game. And there's not a hesitation by anyone, whether it's Cooper or Jeff Halpern, who works with the power play, to really kind of figure all this, to try different things, to try to find something that works, and then go with it until it doesn't work anymore, and then you try something else.
I'm going to put $10 on each one of those 5 guys to score a power play goal tonight. just because I have such belief in it, because when you look at different power plays, other power plays, they're about player movement. The Lightning are about puck movement. They stay in the same spot the entire time. So I know some people are like, I can't believe you'd have this antiquated way of thinking of having 2 defensemen out there like it was, 10, 15, 20 years ago and beyond. But they don't move. Like, they just stand there. And if Darren Radish has the best slap shot from the right side, put his ass right there and just make sure. And that's why it's one of the biggest things I'm going to be watching for tonight, is just like, if he's aggressive, I think it opens everything up. If he's passing that puck, it doesn't even matter who's over there. You just put a cone. It doesn't matter. But now you put Point in his spot, you Gensel, Kucherov, Hedman. I got high hopes for it. Any concern from you about Anthony Cirelli not being in the lineup tonight? We saw the lines jumbled up a little bit. Good sign that Nick Paul's going to be in there, but no Tough Tony, and we know how tough he is. He's been battling this for the last little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it a number of times in the past probably 3-4 weeks that Anthony's missed, had maintenance days, hasn't skated sometimes, had some practice days that he's been off. So he's definitely dealing with something that he's been dealing with for a while here. Obviously, there's no keeping him out of games, because we saw that in the last game where I think he missed 3 minutes of the second, was on the bench, came back 3 minutes into the third, and finished off the game. So, but that's the matchup line, right? So we know how well him and Hagel work together. I think that's going to be a big thing to watch tonight. Who kind of slots in there? We saw Jake Gensel in the center spot on that second line in skate. That's an unfamiliar spot for him, but he certainly has the two-way game to be a guy who can fill those shoes to a certain degree. So, but I mean, there's the question of where's Anthony Cirelli, this weekend, and then there's the question of, where's Anthony Cirelli next week when he's supposed to be playing for Team Canada in the Four Nations. So the good thing is we could ask John Cooper both of those questions, and again, like, I think it's day to day right now. These are important games, so he wants to be out there. They want him out there, and then there's the Four Nations aspect to it. Cooper was like, let's not talk about Four Nations yet. Let's get through these three games, and then, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But knowing Anthony Cirelli the way I do, I think that it would be very odd to see him miss all 3 of these games before the break.
Do you think so? Then, if that's the case, then you probably think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, that he will play for Team Canada. But is it smart? I guess that's the better question, because we know him, right? We know how tough the guy is. He's tough as nails. He go against the other team. But looking at it objectively and saying, he's not a guy that plays on the periphery. This is not a guy that's like, oh, you know what? You go get the puck. He plays a tough game. He plays a rambunctious game. And the reason why he's on Team Canada is to go against the Austin Matthews of the world, the Forsberg and the Zibanejads and the Barkovs of the world. Like, he's going to be tasked with, just like he is with the Bolts, going against the other team's best player. Is it wise that he plays for Team Canada if he has a nagging injury? Right? It's a fair question. I know you and I are like, I don't know, but I mean, like, I think the answer is I would say no, it's not smart, but we know how much this tournament means, even for people on the outside. It's like, oh, it's a glorified exhibition. I'm one of them. But this means a lot to him. And I know it means a lot to him to make this team and to play on this team, and Coop and JBB. But it's got to be weird for them too, because they realize that, like, hey, are we sacrificing our most important defensive forward for an exhibition tournament when that could cripple us down the stretch as we try to get another cup?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, they're in a tough situation as decision makers for that, because, obviously, like you said, he plays a very physical game. It's one that, it's physically demanding. And for him to do it the right way, he takes a beating, he gives a beating. So it's, like I said, it's not around the edges at all. He's on everyone. So I don't know. I really don't know how to answer that question, because there's the, we know that these guys deal with stuff all the time physically, right? And only at the end of the season do we really hear about how banged up guys are. Right. When Julian reads off that list of, like, this guy had a broken thumb, this guy had a pin in his knee.
CVS receipt, right?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, basically it's a CVS receipt without the coupons. So and then when you add in and yes, it's the Four Nations, it's not the Olympics, but still representing Team Canada for all of these guys means a whole heck of a lot. And I asked Cooper this when I sat down with him about, maybe some people in America don't really understand that, like how much that really means. And he had some pretty interesting. I will be writing that story next week, so I won't give you everything. But just how much it kind of means from everyone involved in Hockey Canada to play in this. So you're weighing so many different things, right? And just the premise that guys do play through a lot of things, whether it's Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final or Game 53, 54 of the regular season. So without knowing too much about what his specific injury is, it's hard really to tell.
Yeah, I'm glad you just said that, because one thing that I was able to take away from the fireside chat with Julian was how much it meant to him. Like he kind of sat up in his seat a little bit. He perked up when he was talking about it. Yeah. And you felt the emotion. You felt that there was a lot of like weight to the decision-making process and getting to know these other general managers and watching these games and traveling across the continent to make sure that he was making the right decision. You want to talk about people that take things lightly? Julian Breezewell was on the entire other end of the spectrum. Like he was just like, and I don't want to say he was like serious where it was like awkward, but it was just, you could feel the passion. And I don't know if people in the States, as you just alluded to, like really get that. And they'll say, oh, it's a glorified exhibition, but this is their sport. Like this is what hockey, is everything to Canadians. And if they have an opportunity to put their sport on display for the world in a best on best competition, they're trying to win this damn thing, right? Like they're not going like, hey, we're here to participate. Like they're here to dominate. They're trying to win. And right. Especially after what just happened at the World Juniors, where they didn't even medal. Like that's embarrassing for them. If the US doesn't medal in the World Juniors, it's like, whatever. It's the juniors, but if Canada doesn't medal in the World Juniors, it's like, fire alarms going off. Like we got to fire this guy. We got to get rid of this guy. We got to figure out a way to get this right. And this is a way to almost atone for that if they win the Four Nations. I want to ask you about some of the guys in the middle six. Well, actually, let's start here. Connor Geekie getting sent down. Any surprise there of him getting sent down? And what do you think it'll take for him to get called back up?
Yeah, I think that, just from talking to Connor, I think he was pretty kind of honest about how, there is a physical and mental toll that reaches a young player at this time of the year. And I think he was dealing with all of that, and knowing that, the Lightning can tell him, you've exceeded expectations. We didn't expect you to be here. So everything you've done here has been, just icing on top of the cake. Right. But the player himself puts a great amount of pressure on himself to perform. And I know Connor Geekie is one of those guys, and I think that not that he got into his own head a little bit, but I do think that as he wasn't seeing results, and he probably hit a little bit of a physical fatigue wall as well, that it kind of cratered a little bit for him. And his numbers the past few games before he got sent down probably showed that. Because that's not the player that we saw in the beginning of the year. And it's certainly not the player that I think that he's going to be. He's going to be that dominating top six centerman who can play both ways and do a lot of things. So I think that sometimes you've got to slow it down, get a guy back down in an environment that maybe, there's a little bit less pressure, and he can kind of slow his game down, slow his mind down, rest up, get his body right and his mind right in a lot of ways. And I think it's only a matter of time before we see him again, and in a big role for this team. So, was I surprised a little bit, but not really. I think that when you see, especially where this team's at right now, which is in a major need of points, it's not, this isn't, if this isn't, November where you're saying, we got one, that's great. They need points, and especially against the teams they're playing against. It's huge the other night that they got two, and that and more importantly,
they got none. Yeah.
And it's going to be the same thing tonight. It's going to be the same thing Saturday night in Detroit and to an extent, on Sunday in Montreal. So this is kind of, backs against the wall time to use, a phrase is, they've got to this isn't the time to really develop a 20-year-old guy through his struggles at the NHL level. They've got to win games. They've got to get points.
Connor Sheary gets called up. You think this is just kind of a 3-game thing for him? Because I think deals are going to be made soon. I said yesterday with our buddy Eric Erlinson, I think they need to call Isaac Howard up as soon as the college season is done. I was surprised that Eric agreed with me, but it seems like he can step in. I'd rather see him out there than a Gonsalves or a Chafee. Hell, I'd rather see, I might want to see Raleigh out there more than I'd rather see Raleigh out there than Chafee Gonsalves sometimes. But yeah, Connor Sheary, you're going to give him another opportunity here. What do you expect to see from him tonight? Because looking at some of the lines from Morning Skatey, it looks kind of crazy.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to get Raleigh on skates pretty soon. So
nice.
We might get him out there, but
love that.
Yeah, with Sheary, I think it's a situation where right now with especially with the forwards, you've got to find what you've got right now. Is Connor Sheary a guy? You got to answer the question: is Connor Sheary a guy that can help you down the road? And you've got to evaluate that to a certain extent. We've seen Gage Goncalves on the first line in the past in a few times. So I think some of the things that we're seeing here is like a little bit of, while you're needing these points at the same time, like we said, is trying to figure out where some of these younger guys fit in. And I'm on the Isaac Howard train too. I'm conducting it with the so there's help down the road, I think. But right now you've got to figure out what you've got to and there's been a lot of movement already, but I think Julian is really posed for that right after the Four Nations break to really, go at it and really have a good idea of where, what the market's like, what's out there and how maybe some of those possibilities fit. So with Sheary, he's got a great opportunity right now. He can, obviously his time here has been a massive disappointment. There's no doubt about it. I think he'd probably be the first one to tell you that. But, I think going down there, much like, it's a different situation, but, for a guy who's been in the NHL for years, going down to the AHL, having a more prominent role, being kind of looked at as a guy who has NHL experience, maybe a little bit more of a leadership role. Connor, he's not the most outgoing vocal guy in the world. Right. So I think when stuff, not to use the word crater again, but like when stuff went bad for him, he kind of went into himself a little bit and he couldn't get himself out. So now, you set him up there. More than anything, he comes back with a lot more confidence. And whether that translates on the ice, we'll see. But, this is a guy who, you paid a good deal of money for.
Yeah. Multi-year deal.
Yeah. Right. And you want to see if he can help you. Also if maybe someone else wants him too,
you audition the guy a little bit,
right,
for somebody else that thinks that maybe a change of scenery could help. I like that a lot. What do you got coming up on Tampa Bay Times, tampabay.com/sports? I know you got the story coming up with Coop.
Yeah, so we've got in today's paper, a really cool story I thought on Brandon Halverson, the backup goaltender at the Lightning just called up, and the story that he has just an amazing story. He was a second-round pick by the Rangers in 2014, played one game in 2018 in the NHL in relief of Henrik Lundqvist. And since then, just kind of injuries, bad breaks. He was out of pro hockey for a couple of years. He was actually working on the Pepin family farm in Tampa for a while, basically doing odd jobs. He had to sell his car. He was doing, before then he was doing Uber Eats and stuff like that. So he basically was able to get he tried out for the Orlando team, the CHL team, that's the Lightning affiliate. He made it, but then he got cut. The next year, he went to the coach and said, "Can I have another chance?" They gave him a chance. He signed a contract with them. And ECHL contracts are like day to day. Like you can cut a guy at any time. And they signed him for $600 a week. And he ran with it. And before you know it, he credits a lot of his goaltending coaches who really, a couple guys who, he needed someone to believe in him at that point. And he got a couple of goaltending coaches who did in the Lightning system. So, and he's run with it. And now he was an AHL All-Star this past, just named very recently. And, and who knows? He's on the roster now because Jonas Johansson's hurt. What's going to be interesting now is what they do with this weekend series.
Right.
Typically a back-to-back, you'd have Vasilevsky play one game and the backup play another game. But because Vasilevsky's going to have about, a week and a half, 2 weeks off, do you ride Vasi for both of those games of that back-to-back? I asked Cooper about that today. He was in a very day-to-day mode, so he did not want to answer that. But that's a really cool story. I'm really happy with the way that came out. And obviously next week with Four Nations coming up, we'll have a Cooper story and a really cool story on Brandon Hagel, who I guess, again, I just love these stories. I mean, we know Hagel's story about, the guy who, was never on World Juniors teams, who, was drafted in the 6th round, wasn't signed, and then now the player that he's become today. And really, you were at the Julian presser where Julian talked about how, for a guy like him, he benefited from the guys around him, right?
Right.
And Brandon talked about it a lot. He was like, listen, if I came to the Lightning straight out of juniors, I might not have made it. I might not have been able to crack the lineup. I might have been, Carter Verhaeghe, something like
Marchessault,
And we've seen many of those guys, but he got to Chicago. He got the opportunity to play there. He obviously played with Patrick Kane, learned a great deal from him, and then came here and had a room full of guys he could learn from too. So, and he really credits that a lot for his development, and especially, it seems like so long ago, but when they first traded him, he was on a checking line, right? He was with Cirelli and Alex Killorn, and he talked about how, and we've seen it now for probably both ways, how Cirelli really helped him develop his defensive game and make him into that elite penalty killer that he's become and that elite defender that he's become. And now, again, like I think what we see in Brandon Hagel is one of the top, two-way forwards in the game. And he's only 26, 27 right now. So, and I think a lot of people think that this Four Nations tournament is going to be kind of a coming out party for him because maybe a lot of people haven't really paid that much attention to him, and now they're going to see him on a bigger stage.
Yeah, they better because he has been fantastic for the Bolts, and it just seems like whoever Anthony Cirelli teams up with over the years, whether it was a Matthew Joseph or Alex Killorn or Brandon Hagel, it speaks volumes of the kind of guy that number 71 is. That's Eddie in the Yard on Twitter /X. Guys, make sure you subscribe to the Tampa Bay Times. I say that every single time we have somebody from the Times on, whether it's Ed or Stroud or Topkin or Colleen Wright, or one day when we get John Romano on. Make sure you subscribe to the Tampa Bay Times. Support local. I can't stress that enough. TampaBay.com, TampaBay.com/sports. I'm reading that thing every single day. Read that Halverson story. It is amazing. Ed, appreciate it. I'm going to be at USF tonight, so I won't see you. So enjoy some time off, and we'll talk next Thursday about all things Tampa Bay Lightning. And be ready, because if it doesn't work on the power play, I feel they're going to ask you to take Radish's spot.
That's not a good idea.
Not a good thing. That's why it's Eddie in the Yard and not Eddie on the ice.
All right, Jay. I'll talk to you later, man.
All right. Thanks, pal.
Yeah.
Be well. Ed Encina. Again, subscribe to the Tampa Bay Times. Again, every little bit helps support local. Eddie in the Yard. All right. Thank you to everybody that joined us today. What another great show. John Sabol from Fox 8 News up there in Cleveland. I miss that guy. Just an all-around amazing person. A good friend of mine. Jordyn Listro from the Tampa Bay Sun. God, how great is she? We're so lucky to have her in the Bay Area. And then Ed Encina from the Tampa Bay Times. Support local. Read those stories on John Cooper, on Brandon Halverson, on Brandon Hagel. That guy is he's just no joke. He is no joke. All right. Follow me on all social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok. Like and subscribe on YouTube. If you have nothing to do tonight, or if you're looking for something to do, get over to the Yuengling Center. I can't stress it enough. I'm wearing the shirt. This ain't the same old South Florida, my brother. It ain't. It ain't. Tonight is going to be a very emotional night at the Yuengling Center. Love wins. It's going to be the whiteout night. The American Athletic Conference and USF recognizing and honoring the late, great Amir Abdur-Rahim. So please, if you can get there, let's pack the YC. As Jaden Reed said yesterday, that's what Amir Abdur-Rahim would want. All right, back tomorrow at noon. I might do it here. I might do it at USF. I don't quite know yet, but I'll be live at noon right here on the Jay Recher podcast. I am